Hey, 8th grade. So today we're going to start talking about surface currents and climate and how surface currents or ocean currents can affect climate on land. So let's first start by talking about climate. As air moves, it's affected by sunlight, cloud cover, oceans, even landforms such as mountains. So all of these will affect the temperature, the pressure, and the moisture content within that air. Climate actually refers to the average year after year conditions of temperature, precipitation, wind, and clouds in an area. So you might have heard things like a tropical climate or a temperate climate, and that's referring to these average conditions that have occurred over a long period of time. The water cycle also determines climate patterns. Temperature is actually affected by latitude, altitude, which is height from sea level, distance from large bodies of water, and ocean currents. So all of these things play an important role in temperature. So if we talk about these things called surface currents distribute tropical heat. So the warm ocean currents are shown in red and the cold currents in blue. So you see down by closer to the equator, we had this surface current form. It's red, and it brings warmer weather up the coast of the United States. As over here, there's a blue or a cold current that comes down, which sends a little bit of a cooler climate all the way down into Mexico. So just like that other picture showed, the same currents, the Gulf Stream is that one that runs up the East Coast, and it carries warm water from the tropics to the North Atlantic Ocean. So if you follow this line for the Gulf Stream, this is a warm water current, and it flows all the way up to the British Isles over here, and it creates a really mild climate for this land, which is at a really high latitude. So normally the British Isles would have very cold climate, and it's a little bit milder because of this Gulf Stream current. In California, we have this California current, and it carries cold water from the north all the way to Mexico, and this keeps the climate along the west coast fairly cool all year compared to temperatures inland. So you might notice that the coastal temperatures over here on this west coast are much cooler than the ones in the middle of the earth at the same latitude. You'll notice that there's currents all over the ocean. There's the Brazilian current, the Humboldt current, and the Canary current, and all of them carry either cold or warm water along the coastlines, and this affects the climate of those areas. A current is a really large stream of moving water that flows through the oceans. So unlike waves, currents carry water from one place to another. And some currents move water at the surface of the ocean. Others move water deep within the ocean. So there's something called a surface current as well as something called a deep ocean current. And these are two different types of currents. Surface currents carry warmer and less dense water from the equator to the pole. So when you think about ocean currents, not only are you talking about the density that's being affected by the temperature, but the density is also affected by the things within the water, including gases. And gases dissolve easier into the cooler water. So surface currents carry warmer, less dense water from the equator to the poles. The warm water from the surface currents replaces the colder, denser water that sinks to the ocean floor. The deep currents carry colder, denser water along the ocean floor from the poles back to the equator. So that deep current is full of cold water, and it carries the water closer to the bottom from the pole to the equator. So these are flowing in opposite directions. And then the water from deep current rises to replace water leaving in the surface currents. So as that surface current water leaves, this deep current comes up to take its place. Notice that this looks much like a convection current. It's the same idea coming around here, where the warm air rises and the cooler air sinks. Surface currents are actually mainly driven by wind. They warm or cool the air above them, and this affects the climate of the land near the coast. The Gulf Stream is the largest and most powerful surface current in the North American Ocean, and it has the most influence. It moves warm water from the Gulf of Mexico to the Caribbean Sea. It then moves northward along the east coast to the U.S. The Gulf Stream has a warming effect on the climate of the East Coast. So those coastal areas tend to have a milder or warmer climate even during those winter months due to the Gulf Stream current carrying that warm water up. So this picture shows you all the different currents that we have going on within the world's oceans. And you'll notice the ones that actually affect the... Sorry guys, my dog's being a jerk. You'll notice that the Gulf Stream current is affecting the East Coast, the California current, and the North Pacific Drift affecting the West Coast. So this is another picture that kind of shows you the temperature at different areas. So in the red, you have what is usually a warm surface current, and in the blue, you have these cold, deep currents. And the reason it says saline is it's talking about the ion content for the salt water. And then you have this recirculated deep water as well down here. And most of the heat at this point where it becomes cooler is released to the atmosphere. So just keep that in mind. But we do have this really big ocean current going on that is impacted by the temperature of those water. Go ahead and move on to your independent reading today, where you'll be reading and annotating a text as well as answering a few questions at the end. Once you're done, you may move on to your exit ticket and then complete your Quizlet practice for the day on your science vocab.